Hey lieve luisteraars, vandaag is onze aflevering in het Engels en we gaan het in kort ook bespreken over seksueel grensoverschrijdend gedrag, over seksueel misbruik, wordt ook kort genoemd. Dus als dat misschien zwaar voor je is dit misschien niet de juiste aflevering om naar te luisteren. In de show notes zullen we ook nog wat links neerzetten indien je hulp nodig hebt voor onderwerpen zoals deze. So no further ado, schakel ik nu over in het Engels. Hi there listeners, before starting a Spectrum podcast, I want to mention that in this show we're gonna mention cases of sexuality, maybe also sexual abuse and topics around it. So if this is not is very fresh for you or hard to listen to, maybe this episode is not the one for you. In the show notes, we have some links to help you out. It is probably going to be in Dutch, but I think there's always going to be translated in English somewhere. So check them out if you need them. So with no further ado, I'm going to start this episode. Thank you for coming here, and let's enjoy this one. Welcome at Spectrum. I'm Riaz Loves. In this podcast, we center the queer experience. We look for the lessons and the stories behind those experiences. Inside, outside, on the borders, or maybe in the middle. This is Spectrum. Through personal meetings and an in-depth conversation, we shine a light on interesting subjects. And hi, I'm Riaz Loves, your host for this podcast. I'm your sensual, dramatic, activist, queer out of The Hague. Be warned, a lot of queerness in this podcast. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platforms and check the show notes for interesting links. Today we're gonna talk about queer sex. Sex we can fill in multiple episodes with this subject. But let's put sex and everything around it through a queer lens, and that with somebody who can tell us a lot about it. Today we're gonna talk about it with Lucía Lodi, a good friend of mine, and also very, very wise person, at least for me, if we talk about sex, and a very fun person to talk to. We're gonna start the episode. It's a remote recording, so we haven't seen each other in real life. But this is the first time we did a remote recording, so that's why maybe there's a difference in sound quality. Hope y'all okay with it. But yeah, let's enjoy this episode. And now we're gonna switch over to that. Start a recording, see how I think everything works. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So hey Lou, today we have you here, or not here, remotely. And could you first introduce yourself to the world? Who are you, and why should we know you? What do we need to know of you?
Well, first of all, hello world. My name is Lucía, but most of my friends call me Lou. I am a non-binary trans femme from Brazil. Been living in the Netherlands for 6 years already. Why should the world know me? That's a hard question. I don't know. I think I'm interesting.
At least I find you very interesting. We also always have very good conversations.
Yeah, I like to think of myself as someone that, has some nice insights or likes to talk about things that people don't always talk as much. I'm also been doing a lot of work around queerness for quite some time.
Yeah.
I run a support group since 2017 for non-binary, queer, questioning, non-binary, trans people.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in that order. Which is on a bit of a sabbatical, but Corona kind of fucked everything up for everybody, for me included.
Yeah.
So I think this community work during queerness also makes me think a lot about who I am and what is my sexuality, and how do I experience my gender, how I experience my sexuality, and yeah, I think that's bit it. And well, I don't know, bicultural, you know, tricultural maybe. No, I think mostly bicultural.
Even tricultural. I never heard that. I heard bicultural a lot, but never heard tricultural.
Well, I was thinking like, what is it me living in the Netherlands for so long? Because I was
Hmm.
raised half in the States and half in Brazil,
Hmm.
but I've also been here since forever,
Yeah.
or at least it feels like forever. And I was kind of like out as trans here. So it's
Hmm.
also kind of a new birth. I don't know. I'm just making shit up.
But okay, so now we know you,
Mhm.
and of course, in Spectrum podcast, we always ask our guests like which queers we love or which queers we want to like bring forward, talk about them, why they are special to us. And you brought today three people,
Two.
and oh, two. You
Yeah.
brought two people today,
Yeah.
and yeah, tell me about it. Who are the queers we love?
Okay. So the first one is a very dear friend of mine. She's
Hmm.
also Brazilian. She's also trans. And she's a freaking kick-ass performer who does
Okay.
amazing work. Her name is Mavi,
Hmm.
and you can find her at her website, maviveloso.com.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's easier in the show notes.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna put that in the show notes.
Yeah, or
I
her.
saw the Instagram also. Like it's very, very awesome stuff she makes.
Yeah, it's an amazing person, and yeah, always nice to chat with and just see her work whenever I can. It's yeah, someone who's worth checking out.
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice. That's so everybody who listening to this, check that out. And who's the next person?
So the next person became a very good friend of mine through community work.
Hmm.
Their name is Edis,
Okay.
and you can find them on their website, edistentacle.com.
Okay.
They also have an Instagram, and they're an amazing graphic designer and also tattoo artist.
Hmm.
I'm dying to get a tattoo from them. It's just amazing always.
So what kind of style does they have? What kind of tattoos do they put on?
Yeah, so they do a mix between, they have a very nice cartoony style,
Hmm.
um, but the heavy influence with that.
Yeah.
Um, and they also um, do some stuff a bit like morbid, a bit
Okay.
like, um, yeah, so mixing a bit of death and life, and yeah, some really cool stuff. My partner recently got a tattoo from them, which is
Okay.
a giraffe with a abandonment issues, and it's really good. And the lines are just so on point. But they also do amazing work for the community. They designed everything for the support group and kind of community that I run.
Oh, so like a lot of the visual works for the Beyond the Binary and maybe the gender bender queer party was from this person or?
No, no, no. That was from Auka. This person does the stuff for Chip Cutie, which is the one that
Uh,
I have in that I had in
oh, okay.
Utrecht.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so lots of unicorns and rainbows and sparkles,
Oh, that's
and
very lovely.
yeah, and we were also doing some stickers together, which is really cool.
Oh, that's nice.
And those,
So that are the queers we love. Now then I gonna put them in the show notes so that everybody can follow them, check them out, make the waiting list for a tattoo even longer in these moments.
yep,
And today we have a very special subject. And I told already some people what we're going to talk about, and they were like, "Yes, we really wanted this, really want to hear this." So today we're going to talk about queer sex. And normally I ask always if do you want to start somewhere or should I start somewhere? What is the where are we going to tackle this this subject from?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I must admit that when I came up with the subject,
Yeah.
I was a bit more like, yeah, let's do something fun and let's talk about sex. Uh, and right now I'm kind of like, shit, what did I do? I mean, should I have prepared? Should I have thought about something? Um, because yeah, I don't know. It can be a very fun subject, but it also like, do I need to be official now? Am I going to be able to swear? Um,
Oh, yeah. First of all, you can swear and say anything and anything you want. That's not going to be a problem here.
okay. And the second question, can I interview you a bit as well?
You may. You may.
Mm.
I'm always open to questions. I think that leads to way better conversations than just than me just propelling questions to somebody else. Okay, so Lou, you want to ask a question to me first? Go ahead. What do you want to ask me about queer sex towards me?
Hmm. Yeah, I thought it would be interesting to ask you. It's not exactly a question, but
Hmm.
more like ask you to talk a bit about your recent experiences because we had a very short talk some time ago
Yeah.
where you talk a bit about your own experiences with your own gender and sexuality and then how that has been evolving a bit or changing a bit
Yeah.
in the last few, I don't know, months. And I thought that was really cool and
Yeah.
a good way to maybe start having this
From there.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is with me, during Spectrum podcast, I realized that my way of looking towards gender and that I always felt there was something, but not like more in a non-binary way, because I was really attached still to the as identifying as male. And but I always had that there was something a little bit off about it. And then in a Discord server for anime fans and people, like a Dutch anime Discord server, I somebody said to me like, "Oh, you're using he and they. Are you demi-gender?" And I was like, "Huh, what is that?" But I didn't type it. I was googling it first, as a social justice warrior should. If they don't know something, Google it first before asking. And I found that it's like this definition of being half one gender and half not maybe that gender, and I felt really comfortable in that. But actually, for my sexual life, um, I'm gonna be very honest with it. I didn't really have the chance to explore it that much, how gender intersects into that, because when you are perceived as male or female, as male, and you gonna have sex with other males, there's a really scripted out dynamic, and also in like attaining sex. Maybe I sound very plastic now, but like attaining sex is, it follows these scripts, and if you don't follow them, you won't have it. And I'm trying to have like a relationship with that, like how much sex do I want to attain? At what cost do I want to attain it? How am I maybe hiding my femininity? Because I know that would like get in the way of my sexuality. And that's, I think, the little bit of the journey. And I am in a relationship, in an open and polyamorous relationship, but like outside of and therein I can feel very safe. And if I wanted to explore that, I really want that. But I think there's a very disconnect for me when it's about gender and yeah, having sex with other men. So I think that's lately what I'm thinking about, like, do I then want to have less sex and then have better sex and with somebody who can understand the full range of it, or do I just want to follow my needs and maybe not think too much about it?
Yeah, I think that's yeah, I think that's a very good place to start and very interesting, I think, as well. Um, Let me just drink a little bit of water. So so I think it's very interesting. It's a very interesting place to be in, even.
Yeah.
Also because community-wise, what I've been perceiving a bit, and that makes me very happy, is the queer community as a whole, in a way, still, it's very diverse, and that's the good thing, right? So it has all the non-binaries, it has all the trans people, it has all the multiplicity, and in a way, it also has, the fags and the dykes, or the gay men and the lesbians. But what I think is very interesting is that a lot of people in these more like traditional queer gender sexuality roles, like the gay men or the lesbians, I think there's maybe there always has been, but I think now with non-binary kind of becoming more and more known, I see a lot of intersection between that.
Yeah.
And of course, I think the non-binary person who's connected to the lesbian community is a bit more common, but I've been also seeing a lot of people who are from the more gay, male, or fag community really wanting to explore that gender and how they might be non-binary or even trans. But what does that mean? You're a trans woman, but you want to have sex with fags, for example.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a really cool place to be in, and I think we all, because of Corona, have experimented way less than what we wanted to.
Than we wanted to, yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say also about, the script, because you're right. If you do follow the script, it is easier. I mean, I always tell a bit of an anecdote about, right before transitioning, I identified as a cis, as a man, and as a feminist.
Yeah.
And inside feminist circles, a straight-ish, but also kind of by cis man is, a very good position to be in. With, a lot of people attracted to you, it was kind of easy to get sex. And of course, the moment I changed that I came out as non-binary and I started really living the queerness, it got harder. Better, but harder. And and now I'm like, don't even remember that. I'm way happier now, but I remember at the time really experiencing that and experiencing this difference. But if I could say something to you, not that I want to give you any advice, but
I'm open to advice.
It's I think it's worth the journey. What you said about, finding someone who you can explore. You said something about finding someone who could give you understood sex in a different way, or just could give you more, or something like that. But sometimes even just finding someone who's exploring, and I remember having that experience of just being with someone who's also exploring, and we were both kind of like figuring shit out together, even though none of us had really anything figured out. It was really fun to be like, oh, this feels like that. Oh, this feels like this.
Yeah.
Oh, what would happen if we inverted positions now? What would, happen here or there? And I don't know. It makes me feel very fun, more than good or bad sex. It was very fun.
Yeah, I think it's very a more fun way at looking at it and making it way more broader and richer to and also the thing is, like, for me, I'm pretty experienced in sex and sexuality and around the topic, but I'm always, when I'm going out for the hunt or for the other hunt is really bad, that's also something to talk about later. But it's just scrolling on Planet Romeo, but like no, but then it's really I always feel like maybe I look at a very binary way at it, like this person is experienced and can give me something, or this person, I can give a lot to this person because I know a lot around it. And um, I never had it. I had moments before that I was that we were together exploring, but I think it also has to do something with taking control on what we're gonna explore and what we're gonna do. And I never had it myself that somebody else came with like a list of ideas or what it could be open to. And I think also that what makes it sometimes very difficult, because sometimes I think like following the gay man script and that way makes it sometimes easier. But like now I'm wondering, is it really what I want, or is it just because an apparent need that I'm just fulfilling?
Yeah, I think that's, in a way, it's kind of chill as well, because yeah, we do have needs,
Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong in fulfilling your needs, right? Um, yeah, but I think you're on a. It seems like you're also on a really good point. That is like, okay, so is this, maybe it's becoming mechanical in the
yeah,
way that you even go towards it, instead of
yeah,
something more fun and flirty and different. And yeah, but there's also a lot of security, right? I think you
yeah,
also said something about control. And
yeah.
yeah, I think,
Yeah, but I also think is because I'm learning to see sex not from a place of scarcity anymore. I think I always saw sex as somebody who was never. Now I had a short period that I was very thin, and that it became so much easier to fulfill that need. And since I gained weight in that, then especially in the gay world, but I think that's everywhere. But you see how less it had become, and there was a period that I really mourned that was like, oh, I'm accepting my body now, I'm feeling good, but with the other body I could like achieve so much more. And I always looked at sex out of a place of scarcity. Now I'm like trying to look at more from, it is there, it's available, but I should like work on what kind of sex I want instead of work on my body and see it as something I will never get, or not getting because of my body, or not getting because of my color, or anything like that. And I think that really gave me the place to explore much more in sexuality, because I see it in an abundant, trying to see it in an abundant way, instead of like, oh, I never gonna have this, or never gonna have these experiences. But now looking more at like, oh, but maybe I can find it in a way, but maybe I need to work on how I frame that for myself, or how I open up myself, or give or take that control to somebody else. I think that's a little bit how I am in it at the moment.
yeah, wow. I feel like we could have a different podcast for each of one of those things, like sexuality while being fat, sexuality while,
Yeah,
being of color. It's like, whoa, shall we talk an hour about those things? Um,
you're always welcome back again. Like, I think we can have multiple episodes on this.
uh, that's sweet and awesome. But yeah, ooh, I think, yeah, that sounds like such a good point, right? Like the difference between sex as abundant
Yeah,
and sex as something scarce. And yeah, and it's interesting to think how that changes things, right? Like maybe, I can relate to that with what I said about being non-binary and
yeah,
trans, and being, assigned male at birth, and being into, being in lesbian scenes, and being into queers and lesbians, even cis lesbians, because I'm tolerant.
mm,
It's it's not their choice that they're cis. It's not that it's my preference for them to be trans, but you know, I tolerate that they're cis. But yeah, I think like in a way, especially, well, I'm remembering something that somebody told me. I think it was even a transmasculine person who was suffering a bit from being in a very cis lesbian community and having a hard time with people accepting their transition. And I remember telling them, like, yeah, it's hard, period. It's never going to be easy. But the more normative, going a bit back to what you're talking about, the scripts and stuff, the more normative the place you are, the harder it is for people to accept you and for people to see you for who you really are. And I think that also comes a bit with this fear of the scarcity, because it's true, right? Less people seem to be into you. You don't fit the script.
There's a lot of explaining that you need to do.
Exactly. And in a way, I feel very lucky that I'm really surrounded myself with all these different queer people who are in a way together with me, trying to, you know, get rid of all of these norms, or, you know, at least get rid of the hierarchy of these norms for them to be just, you know, diversity, but not like the one thing that we all should be. And if we are not, then we're actually being bad for the movement type of thing.
No, exactly. I think, but also like queerness and queerness is so intrinsically connected to sexuality, to the act of having sex, and in which way, shape, and form, that it's really funny, because like if I talk about queerness, normally then we also talk then over polyamory and about kink and about all these different forms of sex and forms of relationships, while inherently as it has nothing to do with, or I don't know, maybe I should ask you, does it really has to do something also with the identity? Because at some point you can say, like, you know, there's a lot of gay men who follow a very heteronormative script and die by that, but there's also a lot of people. Wait, I'm trying to find what I really wanted to say. Actually, it's because like is sex intrinsically connected through a queer identity?
Well, that's I always tell people that regarding queerness, if you get like 20 different people to explain something about queerness to you, be it what is queerness, or is sexuality intrinsic to queerness, you're going to get like 20 different answers, if not more. Yeah.
What's your take on it?
What's my take on it? I think, you know, as you said, having sexualities that do not fit the norm does something to you, right? Like sex is very intrinsic. It's a very intrinsic need. There's a lot of pleasure, but there's also desiring somebody and being desired by somebody, which is very validating and feels very good. So I think sexuality will bring in something towards you that might throw you towards queerness. And I think, for example, queerness usually breaks a lot of assumptions, causes a lot of confusion. And it's good. It's good confusion. It's good chaos, because it makes us face who we really are and what we really like. One of my questions from the beginning of my transition when I only identified as non-binary was, what is my sexuality? Because what is homo to me and what is hetero to me?
Yeah.
It's kind of none of those things, or is it both at the same time? And how can these things coexist? And I'm not even going into the bi/pan, but really just, somebody desires me. Are they, are they homo? Are they hetero?
Yeah.
And that confusion, I think, for me is very good. And I think for others can be quite disturbing and good, or just disturbing and uncomfortable. But I think it brings that up, right? Like, if you say, if, for example, if someone says, oh, yeah, I'm a gay man and I only like gay men and all that noise, but then they see someone who's very non binary and just really interesting and really hot, and they really feel this desire towards this person, of course they can go all like, oh, yeah, these queers, blah, blah, and kind of like hide their confusion and discomfort, or even run away from it. But I think there's also something in them that, kind of messes you up a bit.
Yeah, but I think those both realities can sit next to each other. Like, you can also be very confused and still feel that attraction in a very clear way towards somebody. Because I think that's, for myself, was the moment I realized, or I wanted to or throw away the label of as a gay man, was when I really had the hots for somebody who was non-binary, and I was really questioning myself, like, what is this? Because I always clinged so hard to the gay label, as really seeing it as who I am as a person, and then this one person comes by, messes this whole thing up, and I was really not scared of afraid, because, like, I'm in a wonderful community of people where there's all room for this, but somewhere I was very confused, but also everything made also a little bit more sense on how, for me, or maybe in general, but how for me sexuality works, or attraction works, and that gender seems to have less a role into that I always thought it would have. So I think that's also a little bit a lot of the questions I think queer sex also brings up in us. Because in the beginning, when you said to me, like, we're gonna have a talk about queer sex, like, I asked you for pointers, but on myself, like, what we're gonna talk about, because there's so much. But I didn't know, like, I didn't expect that gender would, like, play such an intrinsic role always into that. Actually, a little bit stupid, because it always does, I think, or like, right? Or
yeah, I think. I mean, but it's also something that's very easy to not pay attention to, or to even just like, get to when you're distracted or something. By the way, I have a hard time, let's say, responding to you when you talk, just because I'm so used to video chats where you silently wait for somebody to finish and then you talk. Yeah. So I'm really paying attention here, but it's just a bit hard for me. I feel like rude, like, oh, I could say something now, but I feel a bit rude about
please,
it.
please interrupt me. I mean, like, no, this is not you. We can just talk over each other, and like, it's the first time for me as well to do a remote video thing, a remote recording. So, but please talk over me if you want to say something. That's
I
okay.
don't know. Maybe it's something also like phone sex that you shouldn't talk over the other, so you can both experience it at the same time.
Yeah. So tell me
You
about
know.
that.
No, but yeah, I think going back to what you were saying, I
Yeah.
think being in a community is so important, and it really gives you that support, right? That you can be confused, and instead of people going to you and being like, "Nah, you're just, you know,
You're
oh,
just
this,
confused. It's a
you're just
phase.
confused. It's a phase, oh yeah, that person doesn't count." Like really having a community that, in a way
Yeah.
brings this together and really is like pro it, like the diversity
Yeah.
of it is like, yeah, it really helps. It really changes your mind and helps you go through all these like little hills of what is this, what is that, who am I attracted to, what is this attraction, what does this mean, what of this person attracts me.
Yeah.
um, but at the same time, and I think this is interesting, is that it can, go the other way around. And it's something that, in my experience, coming from Brazil,
Yeah.
where even now the trans community is so into men, like the trans woman community is so into men, it still has a bit of this connection towards the gay scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I never had. I feel like I've been a lesbian for a long time, and I
Yeah.
don't. And I always say, yeah, it's not exactly lesbian because I'm more bi than lesbian, but culturally lesbian and not sexually lesbian. I think that's
Culturally
another.
lesbian.
Yeah,
I love that.
it's more like the culture in general, the bands, the
Yeah.
style, the um, the stereotypes.
Yeah.
I mean, I do move in with people. The U-hauling stereotype
You got
kind
that
of
down.
fits a bit. Yeah, it's not my first time. Um, but in the same way, like I've always recognized, I am into non-binary people.
Mm-hmm.
I am into, you know, some cis men ish, depending on who. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and coming from Brazil, right? Like it's like, oh, I remember thinking, if I like women, why would I be trans?
Mm.
That's, you know, then you can just be cis, right? And it really took me leaving. I mean, I was never really part of that community, which might have done something, but leaving that community to go to a bit of a queer community
Exploration.
to do some exploration to be like, oh yeah, I can be trans and a lesbian.
Yeah.
Shit, let's use. Um, but in a way, I still feel a bit distanced from this Brazilian community that is still, even now that it's way bigger than what it used to and way more visible in
Yeah.
a good way as well. But yeah, I don't really know any other trans lesbians from Brazil.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I wonder how
To
community.
talk, but also to talk with somebody who like lives the same experiences as you. Then.
Yeah, exactly. Because I
Yeah.
do know nowadays, I know a lot of trans lesbians, bi, pan, whatever
Mm-hmm.
you call it.
Yeah.
But, most of them are from the States or
Mm-hmm.
Canada or Europe.
Yeah.
But yeah, really like someone from Brazil, who shares that cultural background, who shares the
Yeah.
sense of
I
community.
think the also to like have that intersectional idea of finally clicking all those little pieces together, because like being trans, being queer, being lesbian, and then also from a from Brazil, I think it would be like very nice to have people from that community to talk about that. It was for me. It was very healing talking about sex, about how I was being fetishized as a brown
Mm-hmm.
person. When the first time I heard somebody else also say it,
Yeah.
like oh, this changes it, because I really talk to the person like, how do you deal with it, or do you bother, or because I had instances where I had sex with somebody who said like I was a tropical delight, and I
Oh my
stuff,
God.
yeah, stuff like that, and that they love people from Indonesia. Well, I'm not from Indonesia.
Hey.
Yeah, and that then they but then again, I had this need that I just wanted to have sex, and I felt really guilty for it, because in
Mhm.
my head I was like, oh no, this is a bad person and he's a racist and I should never have sex or give myself to him. But somewhere else I also felt the need to just have sex, and it was the available person, and I just ignored it. And hearing somebody else saying that they since I said like, yeah, you cannot always be, you cannot always
Y-
be, my computer was shutting off, you cannot always be
Yeah, my computer as well. Sorry about that.
no, you cannot always be the person who is this bringer of justice and always have to be on point, because sex sometimes should also be just sex,
Yeah, and
and it's a place where you can throw the political away sometimes.
it's messy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I tend to tell a lot of people in the community that I believe that the personal is political,
yeah,
but not the other way around. Um, and I think that's it's a bit of a controversial statement, but one that actually came a long time ago
yeah,
from this comic book artist from Brazil, and she made a comic about this girl who masturbated a lot. That's
yeah,
kind of the main part of the story, but she was also a very interesting person. And I remember her talking about like, being into feminism, and this is like Brazil feminism is really starting to come up since 2013, or
okay,
in the 2010s, that it's really coming to the forefront. But I remember her talking about like, what if we can talk and be critical of all these things, but when I'm in bed, I want to do this, or I want to do that, or I want
yeah,
to be, you know, to talk about kink, maybe dominated,
yeah,
but this is not my political views. But at the same time, for me it was always like, yeah, but the political should not go into every single aspect of the personal. Of
yes,
course, we want the political to guide us, right? It's not like, yes, I'm anti-racist and then in bed I'm super racist. Of course not.
yeah,
But in some ways, like, to not have to think about that as well. Like, yes, I am anti-racist. It doesn't mean that I need to be super conscious if I'm having something with a black person, for example. Sometimes just like, let go, have
yeah.
fun. That's a person too, right? The person is political, but that person isn't also a political being. It's also just someone who wants sex.
Yeah,
Or
I think that's very good. Like how sex can be just this vehicle of like letting go, like to really also have the release of maybe the bodily, but also of the mind and of the political, so that you later on maybe can grab onto that and go all about it. But I think indeed, if politics, and I think it's indeed controversial, because I'm the kind of person who says like, yes, everything is political. Your bed and your curtains, everything is political. But I never thought about it in sexuality, like how political can sexuality be?
yeah.
Yeah, how political can sexuality be? Tell me, what do you think?
Hmm. Well, I think I have a good thing to say about that. So back in 2015,
Yeah,
I went back to Brazil for a visit, and I was talking to a friend of my family, which is basically my second mother.
yeah,
Um, and she asked me how things were going, how I was feeling about myself, and all that. And this is before I came out as non binary and even as trans to myself and to everybody. So she was asking me these things like, "How are you doing?" Blah blah, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm feeling good. These things are happening. Um, there's only one thing that I'd like to change, was that I wish I could be more attracted to trans people.
Okay.
And she questioned that. It's like, well, why? Don't you think it just should be something that you feel or not? Why make it something? But I remember back then and saying like, well, yeah, but I also think that, we're not just animals who can't control our desires. I do think there is something like
A conditioning.
not even conditioning, but just especially like opening ourselves to it. And especially if you talk about trans and non-binary people, it's really about opening those doors, because the diversity of bodies, experiences, and personalities is so big that you really need to push through. And of course, nowadays, because I am trans, I'm like, maybe I was trying to tell myself something back then. But putting into this of what on your question, I think there's a little bit of space. I think there's space to, especially if it's to break prejudices, to break biases. And I think sometimes the politics can really push you into the direction. And please, I'm not telling you, go have sex with a trans person to figure shit out. No, we're not therapists. I mean, some of us are, but that moment is not a moment for therapy or trauma or whatever.
No, exactly.
But it is something like to try to go, okay, so why am I not attracted? Or what is it that I don't find attractive? And is that thing true or not? For example, classic bullshit that people say is like, oh, but you can tell it's not a woman. I'm like, no, you can't.
No.
Oh, but like, no, you really can't. We can't. And we're trained to, one, try to see each other, and two, try, because of how critical we tend to be to ourselves, of like trying to find all the details. And we can't tell if somebody's trans or not. And you can't, not literally you, but you listener, you cannot tell.
Yeah.
You might think you can, but that's just some stereotyping bullshit that will harm everybody, trans or cis. So, going again back to the back of the question, I do think there's a little bit of space for political, as long as it's pushing you into a good way, into a good place, something that is challenging you. And I think that's what, a good political view or a good political community can do to you, right? Like to push you towards your biases, to push you to question all these things that are norms or scripts, like we were talking about earlier, and just, make it so that whatever is in front of you, you can really see, you can really experience, you can let yourself go and learn through the process. And, to give a follow-up of that anecdote, the moment I started feeling attracted to trans women was more or less the same time that I started seeing myself as a trans woman and as an attractive trans woman. So seeing these women as attractive gave me the opportunity to see myself as attractive, to see myself as a possible object of desire, like you were talking a bit about earlier.
Yeah.
And thank God, God dicks, whatever, for, queer porn, because that's where I got to experiment with all these bodies that I wasn't able to see, offline, but that at least on my computer, I could get to experiment with that, with that attraction and see it reflected back to myself. So I think, does that answer the question? I ramble a lot.
No, that's okay. I already forgot the question, but the answer is beautiful. No, it's I think what you're also talking here about, or at least what I hear, is that challenging what we find beautiful or attractive really says a lot about us, but also that it also always is in a form of a process.
Yeah.
And like for me, what the parallels that I get out of your answer is like me. So like I talk a lot about fat phobia and being fat and not being perceived as a fattest person. That gives me sometimes a little bit like, oh, can I talk about this? But it's
Mm-hmm.
like I struggled a lot with my body image and with fat phobia and how I looked at my body. And also somebody said to me one time, so like, why do you want to lose weight? Because would you not have sex with a fat person? And I directly said, like, of course I would. Like, why I wouldn't?
Mm-hmm.
But then I looked a little bit at my track record, and I was like,
Hey.
oh, that's yeah. Like, and I'm like, am I not
Uh-oh.
actively seeking for them, or is it like, are they the problem and not me? Uh, what's up with the other fat gays? Like, where are they? And
Where are the other fat gays? That is a
where are
good
the other fat gays?
question.
Yeah, because the thing is, I never see the transitional period from just being a fat gay or being a bear, but there's nothing in between. There's like there's like, okay, I gained weight and now I'm a bear, or like I went to the gym and I'm a twink, but never we see this in between phases, I guess,
Mhm.
in the culture. But what I want to say is like, I really looked critically at it and really from a political point of view of like, am I giving this person online maybe more or less the benefit of the doubt, or seeing as a sexual person because of how I'm looking at my own body as something like back in the day that I needed to change, or what I'm very critical of. Um, and who? Oh, there goes my mic.
Uh-oh.
No, but I'm really nowadays. I'm more like, I don't want to say, oh, now I have a better track record, so I'm not problematic anymore. Like I'm cancelled, because that's not it. But I'm very aware, but also in the moment, I think the same thing as you said. Like in the moment, this person is not a political body or for political means to project my own views on them. And I think that's really sex. Maybe I should like see queer sex or sex like this is really the act of letting go. Maybe that's grossly oversimplifying it, but I think, but like
Yeah, a bit.
a bit, but like that's for me, like with this whole political and like who you are dating and how much politics get into that. Um, I think it's good that we have a community that asks the critical questions and that you can take them to bed. But I think we're both agree on not too much.
Yeah, I think just in the foreplay, not in the main action. So there's politics and foreplay. No, just kidding. But yeah, but in a way, it is right. Like that, the politics can lead you to someone, but when you meet someone and you're being intimate with them, to really see the person and not the politics. I
Yeah,
think that's what I personally like. And I know, you know, you were talking about your experience with fatness, and
hmm,
I actually have dated quite a few of fat people, you know, um,
yeah,
and it's for me, it always was neutral. It wasn't like I only date fat people, I only date skinny people. It's more like there's a diversity in bodies. That's awesome. Now, let
yeah,
me see whoever, actually, responds to me, or who, is attracted to me back.
hmm,
And well, after transitioning, I'm experiencing a tiny little bit of fatness as well because, well, I'm a big girl. And if we talk about like online communities, most of
yeah.
the images I see online are not of chubby trans people. They're like,
No,
especially the trans girls are all, the ones that post a lot of pictures are skinny, very feminine, a lot of them are young.
hmm,
And yeah, it's photoshopped, it's, selected images.
Yeah.
But I also miss that of seeing like these fatter trans women, because, well, that's kind of like what I am becoming, and I don't want to hate it either. Like I like it. I like my body. I like my body as it is, but I'm not immune to society, and this is such a
No, exactly.
shitty fatphobic society. Yeah, it makes me, think about that. And I also know from these people about, how, and I guess from my experience as a trans person, you never know until the moment the intimacy happens what's going to happen to you or
Yeah.
to your body.
Yeah.
And I like to think that fat people and trans people they share a bit of dysphoria towards their bodies.
Okay.
And it's exactly that. Like, it could be all good for a moment, and then something snaps in your head, and you're completely turned off.
Yeah.
And it was nothing. It was nothing to do with the person you're with, but they did something. They touched something. They said something, and yeah, you're done. There's no coming back.
No, I had actually a very good example of that, like, because when you were talking about this, where the fat phobia really got me triggered, because as if I had sex with somebody and they would, because I'm fatter, I've more of a chest, and I really like that it's squeezable, but like more with my permission. But also, it's like when they truly were focusing only on that and were squeezing it, or like making it like it was yeah, in my head then a female breast. I really got like, stop touching me there, stop like handling me like that. And then I had one instance that's like, yeah, I have to go now. Like naked middle of the act, I was like, I have to go now. Like I'm feeling chubby in the worst way possible, and I could remember it was not good, but I said like, and that's your fault, and I have to go. But this is when I was 20, so that's like,
and it's also like flight or fight mode, right? Like something happens and you're like, okay, I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
And then we just find an excuse to get out of there. But so in a way, to go, as the questions, like, so it's not that simple, right?
No, sex and let alone queer sex is a very complicated topic, because I think it really touches so much of, I think sometimes daily life. Back in the day, I used to have this very pessimistic view on sex and life, and it was like, we only work or try to find stability so we can like secure sex.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was like, there is not more. Like, we're being social because that's normal to secure that we can mate, and we have a job because to provide a house and food so that we're able to mate. And that was really back in the day. And now, luckily, I let that go. But I can really remember like my relationship towards sex, and that it really being a driving force in even my studies, in work, and stuff like that. It's very complicated.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and especially, I was thinking something that I think in the queer scene is very true. I think it's true outside of the queer scene as well. But, and we're talking about how sex is fun and all these hard but interesting things, but sex is also, and I don't mean this in the, violent physical way, but sex is dangerous. Intimacy is also dangerous because it's so, it's just such something that's so close to who we are, and that can make us feel so vulnerable being naked, and our bodies, but also our emotional states and our heads. And it's
a lot
a
of
bit of
things
a
can happen.
downer. But it's true, right? I
It's
mean,
true.
it wouldn't be a queer sex podcast if we didn't talk about trauma. But,
No,
but
that's
yeah,
very true. Yeah, I think it's indeed because indeed, normally when I talk about sex to other people, we talk about the respectability and the fun side and the exploration side and the exciting things. But I think also in sex, I think sometimes having that pressure of expectation that it must be always exciting and always new and thrilling, and that if one time something happens, that the sex is ruined. And I think sometimes I don't see it per se as a bad thing if sex sometimes is just sex and you just continue with your life, or that it's something you can sometimes expect from the there's not yeah, how do you say that, niet verwachten, yeah, not like that, but more like it's what's coming, like that, like, and then it's not the most newest thing.
yeah,
But sex is also, that's something very comforting, instead of then it should be pushing boundaries all the time.
yeah. And in a way, you never know what's going to come, right? Like that's an interesting thing about sex as well. That if it's a body that you don't know or that you don't know very well, it's
Yeah.
very hard to actually know what to expect. And I think that also makes it a bit risky or dangerous.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
talking about that, you gave me one of the pointers, and you said, you asked one of the questions: why is it so hard for most queers to start something sexual? Tell me, yeah, why is it so hard, Lou? Tell me.
I don't know. I think that's a shady as fuck question, and I was the one who did it.
Yeah, you did it.
Um, yeah. To be really honest, I also want to know because I tend to say, like, I was raised as a boy in Brazil,
Hmm.
especially in the city of Rio, where the joke is that a woman or a girl will tell you no the first time just for sport. I think that's very problematic now that I just
Yeah.
said it. But yeah, like, you have this type of culture. So I kind of learned to make things happen because if
Yeah.
I didn't, nothing would happen, or very little would happen. I don't know. I'm kind of used to being the one who initiates things.
I can feel
Um,
that. I feel the same on that.
yeah, but I think for a lot of people, um, because of what we said, right? Like coming from I think it's a good segue question, because sex feels so dangerous,
Hmm.
for both sides, right? And
Yeah.
I think queers, more than other communities that I'm part of, are very careful, are very concerned with the other person, and want to do the right thing and want to treat them well. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, the healthy ones, not the ones who forget all about that and,
Yeah.
fuck their students or something like that.
Yeah. No.
But, we're talking about the ones who actually care. And, and I think that that's something that, really comes with it, to the point that it even gets in the way a little bit. And of course, I'm not saying that, on a one-on-one basis, even, but I'm talking even about in like sex parties or in kink parties,
Yeah.
where, if you go to a straight sex or kink party, or even a cis gay party
Yeah.
like that, then you see a lot of action, some of it really boring, and
Yeah.
some of it really, problematic.
Yeah.
I remember almost intervening in someone else's scene because the guy who was doming this girl
Yeah.
was really being negligent, to the
Yeah.
point that it almost made me like jump in and say, "Hey, you need to stop this right now."
Yeah.
which I think is like such a big thing for me to be like, oh shit, if I wanted to intervene in this scene, it's because it was really bad.
Yeah.
And when you go to a queer party, you tend to not see that. There's a
Yeah.
lot more care. And when you see the action is also a lot more caring.
Yeah.
People are more careful with each other. And I think, that kind of that responsibility is what also ends up making people,
A
not
little
want to
bit
initiate.
stifled.
Yeah, a bit shy, a bit, not that
Yeah.
adventurous.
Yeah, but I think also what it has to do, why I think, because we know, like we just said it wouldn't be a queer podcast if we didn't talk about trauma.
Yep.
And I think because of how people experience trauma as a queer community, and how and personal accounts of trauma and things happening, I think that can also, and everybody wanting to do the good thing, the moment you cross that line or like make a mistake or that gets out or stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
it's really is like a dangerous, yeah, I don't know how I should like word it the best, but the thing is, like,
Yeah, I
that we are
agree.
in life, we're gonna make mistakes, things are going to happen, but there's a difference in just leaving it or taking responsibility and still acknowledging it's wrong. But I think a lot of people are afraid that maybe if something like that comes out, like there's gonna be a narrative shift and you lose your community.
Yeah. But I think that's a really strong point. I personally don't see it that much.
Hmm.
I would actually be very sad if I lost community because of something I did, because
Yeah.
I feel like we have so much history, like not even like you and me, but as a person, we have such a
Yeah.
history and the things we do, and you know, yeah, it's tricky. It's hard. I was telling you, I was raised as a man, and with
Hmm.
with all the good and especially the bad that comes with it, and I've got myself in some really bad situations that I did things that I regret, and then that I had to apologize to people and
Yeah.
try to make some form of reparations or something. And because like, to put this a bit in a shorter way, maybe,
Yeah.
for a very long time, and especially with the hashtag me too,
Hmm.
I had the question, is any of these about me? Not
Yeah.
because I did so much shit, because especially compared to Brazilian men, I didn't,
Yeah.
but because you're always raised with that, like, shit, you know I didn't realize this. Did I do something that wrong?
Yeah.
Or, which I kind of don't want to say it, but to really, say it out clear, am I a rapist? Was a
Yeah.
question that went through my head a lot growing up, because I really did not want to be that. But did I do that by negligence? Did I do that by ignorance? Did I do that because of toxic masculinity?
Or you didn't see it, or some
Exactly.
other circumstances. Yes.
Exactly. And yeah, and it's kind of weird to me sometimes that, I'm still, you get up, you get the dust off your shoulder, and you
Hmm.
keep going.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think that's also like maybe something in the trend. I think that's Dutch, but like um, continuing this conversation instead of stopping at the basics. Because in queer sex, we also talk a lot about consent,
mhm.
and like how that should look, and what it involves, and what creating a safer space and intimacy and all those stuff like that. But it's never where I heard somewhere or could find somewhere something about um, like, okay, but what do we do if something goes wrong? Because I think sometimes you just don't see it, or something happens. Like, what should we do as people? Or how does taking responsibility looks in those things? Because I think we can never continue the situation if we're only talking about something bad happened and this person is bad. Of course, you have the extreme cases of like very big negligence, but
Or
I
repetitive behavior even, which
yeah,
I think is quite nasty as well.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I think it's something that the younger queer communities have a bit of a hard time with.
yeah.
So I don't want to be too controversial here. I don't want your podcast to be canceled
No,
if
it's
you
not.
take the hint that I'm saying here. But yeah, I think that's very hard. And, I usually go by the motto that everybody will fuck up.
Yeah,
The most queer, woke, interesting, intelligent, street smart person will fuck up. We all
yeah,
will. It's the most human things. The only universal human thing is fucking up.
yeah.
And yeah, what do
And I
you
think,
do when you're in
yeah,
a situation like that? I personally don't know because every situation is so different, right?
yeah,
Um, but I think the first thing, like as a person, right, is to even ask the question. It's like, was this okay? Because I feel like something was a bit off.
yeah,
Um, and of course, the best is to, prevention, not make it
yeah,
happen. But, second to that is really, do a lot of reflection and just be open about it and think like, oh, did I fuck up? And if I
yeah,
fucked up, what did I do? Can I talk to the person? Can I apologize? Can I, show them that, what I did wasn't good, that I realized that what I
yeah.
did was wrong or
And
wasn't.
that they don't think it's their fault that it happened.
Yeah, exactly. And that, it's just something that happened. And of course, there's a hard moment. There's like, oh, but what should we do about it?
Yeah,
And it's kind of like, I don't know. What does the person want? Yeah, I don't know. In my experience, from the people that I talked to, some of them thanked me. Some of
hmm,
them, said that yes, it was bad, but the story we had afterwards, where I showed a different behavior,
hmm,
um, was comforting. I had some hard conversations about things,
yeah,
sometimes about things that happened in the past with friends who really, opened my eyes about things. So I guess that's also a good thing. Like talk if you don't under if you think that something might have gone wrong, to talk to friends that you trust
yeah,
to really see like, hey, could you help me think about this? Um, but yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of possibilities, and I think something that one of my friends who I talked about this with said to me, was that it's not about looking for redemption
hmm,
or even forgiveness in a way. I mean, of course, we're humans and we would
yeah,
like to be forgiven, but what's most important for us as human beings in these situations, um, is to also take that in, to understand the consequences of our actions, to understand, like, okay, so you did this because of this or that.
yeah.
And of course you did, let's hope that you didn't mean to, but it's still, oh,
It
my,
still happened.
yeah, my stomach is rumbling a bit because I'm a bit hungry. But yeah, it still happens. And you should learn from it. Either learn how to, hopefully to not let it happen again, but also to recognize it,
Yeah,
because it might, what if it happens again?
yeah,
How do you stop that from happening? How do you stop yourself?
yeah.
And
I think like, as I think, and it's like, because we began like, why is it so hard for a lot of people to initiate, or for queer people to start something sexual? I think if it's you're such a vulnerable at that moment, and I think a lot of people have like these things with borders, or that something happened and didn't really go well, have a negative experience, and knowing that you could maybe do that to somebody else is maybe also stifling it, and makes it very, I think, because we also don't know how to deal with what if it goes wrong, or if it goes good, or what it means. And I think, yeah, sex and sexuality is such a broad and different way of communicating, where sometimes I forget that there's a big taboo on it, because talking to you about it, talking in the queer community about it, it seems we're like sometimes in this queer sexual utopia, or that's at least my vision sometimes.
Mhm.
But now I'm also having a different job, and I'm working with a lot of straight people now, actively
Mhm.
talking to straight people to not be queer phobic anymore.
Poor
And then,
thing.
yeah, and then, but I'm getting paid, so that makes a big difference.
Ah.
Getting paid to talk to straight people, like that's the ideal job. No, but like, and talking any hint of sex, then it's like, and they don't know, like, up and tense and everything, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I forgot that we still live in a society that has a lot of taboo on this, and why wouldn't we as queer people also not be affected by that?
Yeah, it's true. Even though, um, in one of our previous questions, it was
Yeah.
also like, yeah, queerness also so connected to sexuality.
Yeah.
Um, and in a way, I think that the way the taboo, because I don't feel like queers really live the taboos that strongly,
Hmm.
or at least most of them are very critical towards the taboos. But I do think we get the consequences of the taboos.
Yeah.
That we have to explain our sexuality, which for other people will be weird or
Yeah.
different or anything. So we end up having to take that, which is not good and comfortable. Um, and what you said about like boundaries and having someone cross your boundaries and not wanting to do that to someone else. Uh, I think that goes with our joke that there's just a lot of traumas involved, a lot of trauma involved in queer sex and queer communities.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't, I mean, it's a shady question, of course, because to be honest, I think a lot of people would like other people to just start more stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
But never do it
but
ourselves.
exactly. But I also, I know why
Yeah.
ish. I have an idea, and it's this conversation that we had, and how hard it is, and
Yeah.
how it can be such a taboo for the rest of society. And
Yeah, and that's exactly why we're talking about it. And yeah, I think, like, we're already been talking an hour long about sex only.
I
So,
mean,
like, but that's always way too short. But I
mhm.
think I have an idea, and I'm just gonna record here, talk aloud. I think we should have more of these kinds of conversations, these intersections of sex with queerness, or fatphobia, or racism, or stuff like that, because I think that would be really helpful for a lot of people. These kinds
Yeah,
of conversations.
and there's so many amazing people who could also talk about that,
Yeah.
right? People
Yeah.
who could talk about, what we're talking about, like fat phobia and sex, and have such a different experience with that. And
Yeah.
yeah, for me, it's more about, I'm a mess. I mean, people say I'm not, but I feel like I'm a mess, and my sexuality is a huge mess as well.
Yeah.
So Guess that's why I'm here, to talk about messy, confusing shit.
To confuse the masses.
Let's confuse the masses. I love that. That's my dream now, to confuse the masses towards queerness. I don't want them going anywhere else, just to queerness.
Just to queerness. So for all the
Yes.
listeners, you heard it. We're here to confuse you and steer you even more towards queerness if you weren't that queer already.
Yes.
So talking about confusion and queerness and all these kinds of things, I think we can like maybe close the subject for a bit, or it's never closed, but like continue
It's
to.
never closed,
It's
honey.
never closed.
It's
No, but
never
like
closed.
to talk about the next section, my queer kid. And in my queer kid, I'm gonna want to ask you, like, what you wanted to hear? What did you have to hear? What is it? What you want to share with your inner child from this point?
Oh, wow. Do you talk about the inner child that exists inside of us to the child that we were? I'm very thorough, so that's why this takes very long.
You can choose. You can choose. You'll be like, what, like back in the day, what do you needed to hear? Or yeah, I think I always steered more on that. Like, what is it? What you needed to hear back as a queer kid?
Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
So I think that the main thing that I wanted to hear as a queer kid was that I should have heard, right?
Yeah.
Is yes, you can be a girl. It's not really about sex because, well, kind of. You can be a girl who likes other girls, and sex will be fun, and you'll be loved, and you'll be attractive. I feel really shallow right now.
Yeah.
But no, like all these fears that I had about not being loved, and I was very unpopular in school, and it was very hard. I was bullied a lot. So yeah, it's okay. It's all okay. You're going to be really happy.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's really cute. Oh wait,
yeah.
one more? Yeah.
No, I think that's mostly it. And also like transition earlier if you can. There's nothing wrong with transitioning late, by the way. But yeah, sometimes it feels like if I couldn't change time and I was talking to my younger self, I would say, you'll have a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
You will be successful in this thing that you're pretending, but you will be very happy. And it's going to be hard, but you are trans, and that'll bring you a lot of happiness towards yourself. And I think that's what I need to remind myself every now and then as well. Yeah. Things will be okay, that I am loved, I have an amazing community with amazing friends. I am sexy, I am desired, and I'm worth something. I'm worth a lot, actually.
Yeah.
But we just forget about that sometimes.
I think that's very beautiful.
Oh, I was going to say, oh, that was kind of a downer.
No, it's good. Like, yeah, but we're not here to only spread happy, positive hashtag team positive vibes only. You know, I think it's good that people hear this in the full range of emotions that we have, and not only positivity. But I want to thank you a lot for this. This is going to be lovely. This is the first remote, and I think the first English episode. Yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So the
Look at me.
Yes.
Groundbreaking. Am I your first, Diaz?
Yes, you're my first.
Oh my God! What an honor.
So where can we find you if you want to be found?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, which I will never remember my link because who even looks at that? And bizarrely enough, I also have a Twitter account.
Oh, really?
Which is, yes.
But
Which
only
is,
for porn or also for interacting with other people with?
no, it's actually Magic the Gathering cards, a lot of nerdiness.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And yes, it's not just for porn, you slutty person. No slut shaming, no slut shaming. Yeah, but it's about a bunch of geeky stuff. And
Okay.
I do have one Twitter account for not safe for work stuff. And that one is called Slutty Beach Top. So the regular is, yeah, so the regular one is the Femme Beach Top.
And the other one is the
Slutty Beach Top.
I will put them in the show notes.
And lastly, if you want to read some queer porn that I wrote and that my project is to continue writing, even though, well, my brain doesn't always help with that, I also have a Medium, and it's also at Slutty Beach Top. Okay.
So I will put everything in the show notes so that all the lovely listeners can find it back, get into it, get in all the both of the Twitter accounts, and yeah, like, thank you so much for all of this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you again for listening to a new episode of Spectrum Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on all the social medias, on Twitter and Instagram at Spectrum_POD, so Spectrum Pod. And share it with all your queer friends and non-queer friends. Help your queer peers out. This was a Dipsaus Productions. I'm Riaz Loves. See you in the next episode. And love you all. Bye.
And I do have one last question that I hope is a quick one. Did you finally read the queer erotica that I sent you months ago?
No, because I've been sent 3 books that I have to read.
Oh my god. It's gonna take you half an hour, for fuck's sake.
Oh no, but I'm really a slow reader. No, I gotta read it. I really gotta read it. I think this is the perfect ending for the podcast.
Yeah.